So we make good use out of an instant hot water tap that we have in our kitchen sink. And then one day I noticed it was doing this. So to you it might just look like drips, but to me it looks like... So what are we looking at here? Here's how one of these instant hot faucets works. You see there are 3 connections into the faucet. And so one comes from the cold water supply that goes up to the valve. And then if you pull down on the valve handle, that allows water to flow into the tank and pressurize it. And then the pressurized water then gets pushed up. The hot water goes up to the spout and out the spout. So my theory was that it was actually the valve that was leaking. So to test that, I went under the sink and turned off the water pressure to the instant hot. And then I disconnected the hose coming down into the tank from the valve. And then I just started to turn on and off the water so that I could see if it was dripping. And then you see it, of course, it is dripping. And so this means that that valve is not completely shutting off the water, and these drips would go down into the tank and slowly pressurize the tank, and then push water up from the tank into the spout. And indeed, as I shut off the water, and then turn it back on again, you can see the drips come and go. So it does appear as though it's the valve. Okay, so I determined that you get access to the valve through the top, and this ring here is actually a nut, and so it unscrews, and then you can remove the lever, and underneath the lever is this plunger with a couple of O-rings on it. And this is a new unit I got on eBay, and so the washers looked, the O-rings looked fine, so I thought I'd just put some lube on it. So I tried that first. So I tried the handle first with the water pressure off, and then I go under the sink and turn it back on, and I get water flow, so that's good, but I still have drips. So next up was to replace the actual O-rings. And that was a bit of a bear because these things were on there tight, and but eventually I got it. And of course, thanks to Amazon, I now have 405 spare O-rings, and still the thing's leaking like a sieve. So my last thought was to just back off this nut a couple of turns and see, and indeed it stopped leaking. So I thought what I'd do is just put a little Loctite on the nut and install everything again, and then just sort of test it and see how it goes. But it's held, and it's been not leaking now for days. So what might be going on here? So if you think of this as being the water pipe for that valve, and this red thing would represent the plunger with the 2 O-rings on it. So in this situation, the water would be flowing from the left, and it would prevent water, but the O-ring would prevent the water from flowing in. But if you pull down on the lever, then it pushes the plunger down, and that O-ring moves out of the way, and the water flows from the left to the right, and voila, you've got water flowing out the spout. But what if the plunger was just a little bit too low and water could seep in past that bottom O-ring? Then you just might get a drip going out a little bit at a time. So that's my theory. And of course, if you back off that nut just a little bit, then it releases a little bit of the pressure on the plunger, and plunger goes up just a shade. So regardless, my faucet's not leaking, so I'm going to call this a success.